put to you some objections which could come from the public.
Okay.
There you go. So yeah, that's sort of the brief, really.
Yeah, fine. Carry on.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And it's Harpal Brar. I'm not pronouncing that incorrectly at all.
Harpal.
Harpal?
Yeah.
Harpal Brar. Yeah. So I've got a very Guildford Southern English accent.
Don't worry.
I'd hate to disrespect you by getting your name.
No, it's not deliberate.
Thank
It's
you.
just an
Harpal.
emphasis on the wrong syllable, that's all.
Harpal?
Harpal.
Harpal.
Emphasis on the second syllable.
Can I just call you Mr. Brar? Brar?
Yeah, that's fine.
Brar. I start. Oh, yeah.
So you can say Harpal.
Harpal. Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, can we just, is it possible to shut the door just for the next couple of minutes? It'll only be about 5 minutes. Yeah, fantastic. And chairman of the Communist Party of Great Britain.
Marxist-Leninist.
I'm joined by the chairman of the Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxist-Leninist, Mr. Harpal Brar, and I believe this is your third time back to Durham. What keeps drawing you back?
Basically, I keep on getting invitations from the Student Society for debating, and if I'm free during that time, I am very happy to come. It's a very nice, friendly audience, so I come back. But basically, you have to ask really the Students' Union, why do they invite me again and again?
Well, an answer to that might be that the position which you espouse is very controversial. You are, of course, the chairman of the UK Communist Party, the Communist Party of Great Britain. And I'm just going to ask you now, we look back at history, and some people might say, if we don't learn the lessons of history, we're doomed to repeat them. And the lesson of history has been that communism in action has failed. Surely you're not espousing the same communism that we've seen in the past. Could you outline what it means for you to be a communist in Britain today?
Things can fail, even if they were working very well, because people who manage them can go the wrong way. And my position is that what happened in the Soviet Union was great. And since the death of Stalin, his successors, beginning with Khrushchev, implemented policies of market socialism and also revision in the field of culture, in the field of ideology, in the field of everything, and they mucked up the whole thing, and over a period of 3.5 decades, socialism in the Soviet Union collapsed. So it's not the fault of Marx and Lenin, it's not the fault of Lenin and Stalin, it's the fault of his successors, Stalin's successors, beginning with Khrushchev, who over a period of 3.5 decades brought this very, very great country to collapse.
Some people who hold dear human rights and these sort of values might say, actually, the failures of communism for mankind began when a leader like Stalin gets in, and obviously we look at the purges underneath Stalin, we look at what happened to the gulags, we look at what happened under his leadership. Some people might say, actually, people were dying under Stalin, surely you must have an issue with this.
But this is not true. These are assertions. These are invented in Harvard University. They are invented by the likes of Robert Conquest and CIA. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union, archives have come out, and they claim that during those years, about 900,000 people died, including on the communist side, because there was a near civil war going on. No civil war can be clean and without blood. In the English Civil War in the 17th century, under the leadership of Cromwell, 12.5% of the English population died. That is the truth. Now, you don't therefore condemn the English Revolution. You don't think Charles I should have been allowed to carry on, and feudalism should have been allowed to carry on. A revolutionary clean will always require a certain number of deaths, not because you conduct these deaths in a premeditated way, because the class struggle is real. It's not done as in the Durham Union's debating society. You debate and we go home and have a drink together. There are class interests involved, and classes fight vehemently for their rights or against other people who are trying to take their rights. So this happened in the Soviet Union. But if you look at the demographic figures, if you look at the ration cards of people, the Soviet population during that period increased enormously. And when people talk of the Ukrainian famine, there's a book written by a Canadian professor, Douglas Tottle. He disproves the assertion that there were millions of people who died in Ukraine as a result of famine through collectivization. These are pictures taken from the Civil War era, when 14 imperialist countries invaded the young Soviet Republic and killed literally 6 million people. Those pictures were taken and produced as evidence of the famine during collectivization. So this is all rubbish, it's not true.
Well, looking at the purges, some people might say that there is real strong historical evidence for the Stalinist party actually going out and purging things. But let's move on.
What is a purge? A purge is cleansing the party of rotten elements.
It wasn't just the party.
No, purge does not mean killing people. Purge does not mean any such thing. Purge means regularly the Communist Party went through its ranks and found out corrupt and dastardly elements who had wormed their way because it was the ruling party, they were got rid of periodically. That's what a purge is. That's its original meaning. And this whole set of historians from the United States of America have written about it, including Sheila Fitzpatrick, whose book on the Russian Revolution you can read for yourself.
Well, some people might take this back another level. They might take it back even further and say, well, actually, fundamentally, a system like communism can only lead to a totalitarian state, a dictatorship, if you like. And some people might say, actually, if anything the Arab Spring has taught us, it's that people long and will lay down their lives for freedom, a sort of freedom denied under communism. What do you say to this idea?
On the contrary, the Soviet people were, for the first time, had got real freedoms: freedom from hunger, freedom from unemployment, freedom from illiteracy, freedom from ignorance. Their lives were made better. You know, the best time to test a government is during wartime. If the Soviet people had been so angry at the Soviet regime, Second World War would be the time to overthrow that regime. But they actually went to the battlefront. 27 million of them died with, for Stalin, Comrade Stalin, and for the motherland. That's how much they respected and revered their leadership.
Could I just pop in there that they also were given one gun between two men, and if they turned around, they were actually shot by their officers. What do you say to this idea? There was a totalitarian state.
Are you trying to tell me that everybody in the Soviet Union was trying to shoot everybody else?
No.
So how many people would you need to subdue the whole population? How many shooters would you need to keep them subdued? You know that people cannot be subdued forever. People will rise up. They don't put up with it. If they overthrew Tsarism, they could surely overthrow the Soviet regime if they hated it so much. On the contrary, they loved their regime.
Well, just to flip that up, actually, we did have moments where the purges took place, and actually a lot of officers were lost, and actually we had the issue there.
Yes. You can give me the name of Tukhachevsky and 20 other officers, but you cannot give me the names of hundreds of thousands who were lost, because there were people who were plotting against the Soviet Union. They were got rid of, and during the Second World War, Hollywood produced films how good it was that they were got rid of. Otherwise, they would have been the fifth column, like they were fifth columns in France. There was the fifth column that allowed the Nazi army to come and establish the Vichy regime. But Soviet Union had dealt with this fifth columnists, eliminated them, and that was its strength, not weakness.
Okay, well, flipping this on its head then, you asked me a moment ago, do I honestly believe that the Soviet Union could have sustained itself simply by everyone, if they're out there shooting each other? Surely they're going to overturn a regime. Can I just flip it on its head and ask you, do you think everyone in the Soviet Union was happy? The thousands who starved, the thousands who were imprisoned as political and ideological prisoners. What do you think of what they thought?
The Soviet Union did not face mass starvation. Soviet Union eliminated starvation by 1924 or something.
What about the political oppression, the ideological oppression, the slave camps, the workers exported to construct railways who died constructing the railway?
These are what's your name?
It's Alex. Hello, lovely to
meet you. Alex, these are assertions.
Historically, the railways exist, the bodies and corpses have been found.
No, they haven't been found. That's the whole point. The bodies and things have been manufactured. Nobody has ever in Soviet Russia discovered mass graves of people. We are told that during that period, 26 or 27 million people died. During the Second World War, Soviet Union lost 27 million people. Now that means Soviet Union was losing on the Western Front 10,000 people every day. And people could actually see these are dying. You could see the corpses. Has anybody seen 10,000 people every day dying for 4 years during collectivization? If that had been the case, the Red Army, the Red Air Force and the Red Navy would be involved in doing nothing but shelling their own people and killing them. Nobody saw it, and Western journalists were very welcome and were frequent visitors to the Soviet Union. Everybody went, including the famous trade unionists, the Webbs, Sydney and Beatrix Webb visited, and have actually written a book called Soviet Communism. American ambassador Joseph Davis wrote a book about the Moscow trials that you call purges, and he wrote to his Secretary of State, Cordell Hull, and said, these are real, these people are criminal, they're guilty. And
the rich peasants were guilty?
No. The people who were tried at the Moscow trial, they were top leadership. Bukharin and Rykov and Kamenev and Zinoviev.
Earlier I was referring to the rich peasants.
The rich peasants were, we come to that in a minute. But I mean, he wrote to Secretary of State, and Secretary of State said, we know it, but that's not what we want the world to know. We just want to say Stalin is just killing his opponents. So as far as the rich peasants are concerned, there was class struggle going on. at that time. Rich peasants were killing school teachers, agronomists, collector farm leaders. They were doing all sorts of things. So the Soviet state hit back, and some rich kulaks were killed.
Well, thousands actually, thousands of people
Yes,
without
of course,
trial
yeah.
in many cases.
Yeah, but I mean, just thousands were killed. But they also killed thousands of communists and school teachers, and burnt libraries, burnt collector farm machinery. So they were not exactly people who were arguing in a debate that they got killed. They were involved in class struggle, and that's what was taking place.
Well, if I could just progress the debate
I mean,
forward,
you should sometimes ask the same question
Yeah.
of the British government, which you obviously claim to be democratic. Britain and America have killed over 2 million Iraqis in the last 10 years. These are the questions you should ask these democratic governments, what they do. And there is evidence, and it's produced by respectable magazines like the Lancet. So it's available to everybody.
Well, if I could just look at, philosophy says it seeks human flourishing. Aristotle said we should seek human flourishing. And some people might say, do you know what, these ideals are embodied in many Western governments. However, a regime which is totalitarian by its very nature, denying these human rights, these basic freedoms of political expression, even if we do disagree, people might say, this actually, leads people to rising up. Earlier you mentioned people rising up. And may I remind you, but they did rise up in Hungary. They rose up, they pulled down the Berlin Wall. Evidence has shown people have risen up against every embodiment of communism there's been. What do you say to this? Because people now are rising up for capitalism. Surely communism has failed.
No, first of all, totalitarianism is your expression. You have to define what you mean by totalitarian. To me...
My time?
Yeah.
Totalitarianism, the denial of the rights of political expression, and also denial of other rights too, but that is fundamental, especially when we're talking about politics.
The Soviet regime did not deny political expression. What the Soviet regime did deny was the advocacy of racism, the advocacy of inciting people against each other on national or religious grounds. What it did do was people who were organizing to overthrow the Soviet system. They were dealt with. If anybody's trying to organize a rebellion against the present system, they would be dealt with just the same. That's what every state does. That's what they will do to us when we are powerful enough. At the moment, we can be ignored. I can be interviewed by you, and that's the end of the matter. But this political expression only goes thus far and no further. If we were powerful enough, I'm sure there'd be a couple of coppers standing outside and say, we have got a word or two to have with you. And I find myself in a cell, so we have to take that into account.
Well, thank you very much for your time. It's clear that you have a lot of views which many people disagree with, and that's the wonderful thing about being in this kind of situation. We can discuss and debate these ideas. So I thank you for your time. Welcome back to Durham, and enjoy the rest of your evening.